Welcome back to the From the Ground podcast, with Drew and Brandon Caldwell.
Caldwell Brothers.
This is going to be our second episode, and today we're pretty much talking everything
About the Shawnee Hills 100.
Shawnee Hills 100. So
this will be a good podcast.
Today will be all about Drew. It'll be about everything he went through from beginning of training all the way to the end of training for the Shawnee Hills 100. And then we're also going to kind of walk through what his training is looking like right now, and then what our plans are for the entire team, not even just for Drew leading up, but for Taylor, for Briley, for me, how we're going to film his next race, which is going to be when?
3 weeks from yesterday. So
What are you doing?
I'm running another 100-mile race. We have Rocky Raccoon in Huntsville, Texas. So the reason I'd picked Rocky Raccoon was because of Nick, but watched Nick do Leadville 100 and watched Nick do Rocky Raccoon on his YouTube. So that's kind of why I decided to do Rocky, but we can get more into Rocky at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Do you want to, I guess, go ahead and kind of paint the scene for why you even got into doing 100-mile races to start with, and how the training for the first one started.
Yeah.
And then we'll also try to build in a little bit for the audience as well, or for the people that are listening while they're driving, running, whatever it may be. Because you have a lot of people who do follow your stuff that are runners and that are into ultra training, and you've met a lot of people in that community. So we'll try to gear it toward them a little bit as well. But yeah.
Like why I got into 100-mile racing.
Yeah.
So I went over this last night, actually, so it's pretty fresh in the brain. Shout out the DP podcast with Peyton and Dell.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so I got into 100-mile races and honestly never would have expected to get into 100-mile races. More for me, just because I'd gotten to experience Matt do his first Ironman.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a big one for me, and watching Nick do all of his races. So like watching Nick's YouTube of like his Ironmans, his 100-mile races, seeing all that is kind of inspiring. But then
you kind of have to dive into that though, because for me, I'll be honest, like when I watch these races, these 100-mile races, is there a part of me that thinks that it's super intriguing and that it kind of entices you to maybe want to do the race? I'm sure a lot of people feel the exact same way, but to actually train for one and do one is a different story. So I think it had to have ignited more than just a feeling in you. I'd
say, we talked about this last night too. I think it's more of like I guess you could say like a characteristic trait. Anything, we talked about this in the last podcast, anything we do is very extreme.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever we started with 75 hard and we got into running initially, like anything I do is going to be all out. So
yeah, it's just like this all-in mindset.
Yeah, if I'm starting in stacked, like I'm going to open up a store. So like it's an all-in mindset for sure. So after training for our first half marathon, like in the process, we got to go see Matt do his Ironman in Texas. And just being at an event like that, like really opens your eyes to like what the body's capable of and like what the mind's capable of. And just seeing like that many people do something that seems impossible was really cool for me. And I wanted to be a part of it in some way. Ultimately, my goal down the road is to do an Ironman, but I knew that I didn't really have like the funds for an Ironman, like buying a bike, buying a suit. So what's the next craziest thing you can do? It's to run a 100-mile race. So
you would say what got you into 100-mile racing was you liked the craziness and how out there an Ironman was, but financially,
at financially it doesn't work. Yeah,
like I didn't want to buy a bike.
Yeah,
I didn't want to have to invest but I have 2 legs already, so I can.
Yeah, exactly. I can run with anything.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, 100-mile racing isn't really like cheap by any means either.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want to do it all out, I mean, you're gonna have to buy like a pack. You got to buy shoes often. Like you're putting in like an insane amount of miles training for a 100-mile race.
Mm-hmm.
But buying gear, shoes, everything.
I'll kind of lead you through this then, and then let your brain kind of wander then. So when you started, okay, so you decide, okay, I'm going to do a 100-mile race, and you choose the race solely because it was right around where we're from, and you didn't have to travel super far for it, and a lot of your people could be there for it. And the Shawnee Hills 100 was a notorious course just for how difficult it was. So being that it was your first race, I think it made sense for you. But for the people listening, when you first decided, okay, I'm doing a 100-mile race, what were the steps after that? Like, did you just start running more mileage immediately the next day, or what did you do from there?
Well, we had just finished our half marathon and went to Matt's Ironman. And then I took a break for a second, and that's when we opened up the store on May 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And literally the next day, I got a hold of the cross-country coach at WKU and talked to him about, like, I initially wanted to train for one in Utah. That was the one in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't make sense. And he kind of told me that, like, you're going to have to train for elevation, which, like, it doesn't really make sense right now.
Yeah.
I found the one in Illinois, and I was like, oh, it's perfect. It's close, kind of like you're saying. But I asked him if I really, like, had enough time to, like, train for a race like that, because I had a little over 3 months to train for Shawnee.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah, dude, like that type of guy, you know what I'm saying? Like, he believed in me, and he knew that, like, whatever he planned for me was going to work. So the day after we opened up the store, I signed up for the race.
How much time did you have at this point?
3.5 months.
So you're going to a guy who has done distance running his entire life, coached distance runners his entire life.
In Colorado too.
And I'm not calling you a rando, but some random person comes up to him and says, hey, I just ran a half marathon. I want to train for a 100-mile race, and it's in 14 weeks. And this Division I cross-country coach looks at you, and he's like, yeah, I got you. Let's do it.
Yeah.
That's probably pretty hard to find.
Yeah, it really
I would say
is.
most coaches would look at someone in that moment and probably say, this may not be in your best interest, brother.
I
But
know. Yeah.
he supported it.
Not to mention, too, like, on, like, a timeline basis, we had started running 4 months before I signed up for the race,
Mm-hmm.
and I had less than 4 months to train for the race. So all within eight months
Mm-hmm.
of running,
Yeah.
I ran 100 miles,
Yeah.
which is crazy. But we signed up the day after, so it was May 5th. I signed up for Shawnee Hills, and we got started immediately. I went from running the same mileage that we had ran in our half marathon training. So I started out at around 30 miles,
Mm-hmm.
and he picked me up gradually. We went up 2 miles a week from that point until we were around like 45.
Mm-hmm.
We coasted around 45, did a deload a week, and then picked it back up. I think the most mileage I had gotten to in my training was 60 miles in a week.
Damn.
But he took it slow. I mean, that's why I think he figured we had enough time just to work the way up in like 2 miles a week until I was at a comfortable spot, and then ride that out, because average I had like 55 miles a week by the middle of my training.
So what did the majority of your training sessions, what did they look like? I think a lot of people probably wonder that, because obviously I know you, so I know what your training sessions look like. But I think for someone who's never seen a 100-mile race or even thought that it was possible for someone to run that type of distance, when were you training? What did your training sessions look like? And
I had that in here too.
how did he structure it, I guess? Because some people may be runners and they know that you have your easy runs, you have speed runs, tempo, progression.
Yeah.
But how do you structure runs if you're going to run 100 miles?
Kind of one of those like newbie things too. I figured that he did train me he gave me like one hill workout a week, and he gave me one speed workout a week, and the rest were endurance-based runs. So zone 2 runs, which if you don't know what zone 2 running is, it's basically just your easy run. And I was clueless, so I didn't do the hill work that he told me to do, and I didn't do the speed work that he told me to do ever.
Wait, I didn't know this.
Yeah, I only ever did zone 2 work. So
if he had like a 6-mile speed run, you just
ran at zone 2.
You just ran 6 miles.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
Yeah, every day. Yeah. But which is why I feel more comfortable going into this next race now, that I am doing my speed runs, and which makes sense why I didn't get any faster during my first prep. And I think we talked about that. Like, I hadn't gotten faster from when I started to when I finished. It's because I didn't do any speed work. I just did zone 2 running.
Which I think if you were just trying to complete the race would make sense.
Yeah.
But with this one, you're trying to do it in under 24 hours. So speed work actually does have to be a priority, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah. And I've gotten my zone 2 like paces down like by a minute almost since I started with this coach. But we'll also get into that too. But yeah, I did zone 2 running every single day. And then keep in mind, so I signed up for this race the day after we opened. And whenever we opened, I didn't have any employees. So I was working the store 7 days a week, which is 66 hours a week. And Monday through Friday was 10 to 8. Saturday was 10 to 6. And Sunday was 10 to 5.
Yeah.
And I chose to run all my runs after work because for me personally, like I enjoy running at night.
Yeah.
I remember calling you one time and like telling you that I enjoyed running at night because, I mean, this sounds like corny in a way, but like I knew that kids my age were out partying on Friday nights and Saturday nights, and it felt good knowing that I was out running,
working towards something,
10 to 12 miles while they were out at the bars, like partying. So it felt cool for me, and that's kind of what got me through like my training. But I did that every night. So I ran six to 7 days a week during my first training, and I ran every single run after 8. So if I had an 18, 20 mile run, which consistently towards the end, I had 18 to 20 mile runs on Saturdays or Sundays.
Yeah.
I would run those after 8 o'clock, and I'd get done sometimes at 12 at night.
I think that's cool for people to hear. The reason I say that is because I am this guy, like run early, run in the AM, lift in the PM, but I think most people think that that's how it has to go. So whenever you hear that someone did train for a 100-mile race and ran in the evening, there is flexibility with that. I think if that makes sense for your schedule, and that does tend to be when you're, I would say, more creative or your brain is awake, you definitely are more of a night person, so that makes sense. Whereas if you ask me to run 10 miles at 8 and 10 p.m. at night every single day of the week, I'm hating it. There's no way.
Yeah, that is when my brain is most creative, and I think I can think a lot more at night whenever I'm by myself out there on the roads.
And how much does that help with everything else in life?
An extreme amount.
If you're in zone 2 at the time of the day, whenever your brain is most creative, that's where all of your ideas will come from.
Yeah, and that is where most nights I know you were about to go to bed, but we'd call like while I was running.
Yeah.
I remember you calling me and being like, yo, you're running right now, aren't you? Like, yeah, every time. But I mean, it was fun. I enjoyed it. Like, it was a struggle at times, like running until 12, 1 sometimes, and going to sleep at 1 or 2 almost every night, and then waking up and working 10 to 8 again and doing it again after work.
I think too, if I was listening to this and I didn't do any of that, I would say they're just trying to be a tough guy. And that isn't the case. I think that it just happened to be that you got into running at the same time that you were opening a store.
Yeah.
So that just became what was required if you wanted to do what you wanted to do.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's a sacrifice I had to make to run 100 miles. I wasn't going to do it any other way. I mean, I could have split my runs up in the morning and at night if I really wanted to, like my longer runs. But I mean, you're still out there for the same amount of time too.
For sure.
But yeah, that's kind of how the training went, like while I was at work. Do you have anything else that you think? Like,
yeah, I wondered, because this would be something I would wonder too if I was doing a 100-mile race. What do you have to run 100 miles before you run the race? Obviously, you're not going to run 100 miles before you run the race, but do you have to run close to that? So someone that's never, like, did you have an 80-mile training run before, or did you not, and what did that look like?
So the most mileage I got up to in my training before my biggest training run was 22 miles. And it hovered around, my long runs hovered around 18 to 22. But my biggest training run was a 40-mile run 5 weeks out. and I did all 40 that day. You came down and worked the Bowling Green store for me. Which this seems crazy. Like looking back at it now too, I did the 40-mile training run all by myself out at Mammoth Cave,
Which
and
arguably may have been harder than the race itself. Think about it.
that was terrible.
A huge part of the 100-mile race is the people that are there to help you at the aid stations and have everything that you need. And looking back, that was kind of dumb.
Yeah, on my part, 100%. And
Yeah.
I don't believe you need to have a training run like that if you're into running a 100-mile race. I think for the first time that I was going to run a 100-mile race, it made sense, and my coach knew that.
Would you say that it's like there's a point of diminishing returns when you run a certain mileage all at once?
There is.
And
Yeah.
the purpose of that run, though, I would say was more
Mental.
brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, what does your brain do whenever you get past a full marathon distance and you know you're pretty much only halfway through a training run by yourself in the midday summer heat, no one else there to help you? It's dumb. And like you're in an area that doesn't really have that much service. I'm working the store. I'm looking at the phone, tracking your location, seeing your little dot move. And if your little dot stopped moving at some point in time, I'm like, he's fucking dead. Yeah. Like, I'm going to have to leave the store, nobody here, and make sure he's all good. He's just out in the Kentucky wilderness somewhere just laying there. But
yeah,
I'm being dramatic. But
yeah,
obviously.
And in that 40-mile train, like actually back to what you were saying, we talked about that often. At some point during a training run, it's almost like it's overkill.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you're conditioned enough to run 100 miles, and it's all mental at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't know what mile that is, but it is a thing. And running 40 miles isn't anything physical, because at some point, like I was physically ready to run 100 miles,
Mm-hmm.
like mentally ready. Like I didn't know. I've never ran 100 miles.
Yeah.
So the 40-mile training run, I don't know if it helped me or made it harder on my brain, because
Damn.
when I finished the 40-mile run, like knowing how I felt, and I remember telling you that too, knowing how I felt in that moment, I was like, how am I going to do 60 more miles? Like, how does that even, I can't even comprehend that.
That was something, I think you have a gear in you. I don't want to say that I don't have, but that was the day I realized that you kind of thrive in that situation. When you sent me the video of the 40-mile training run, you were at one of your stops, and you sent me a video of your leg literally just
Cramping up.
I
was at mile 18.
And a bad cramp too. And it was like, you could see it grabbing, and in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, okay, he backed out of the training run. He's about to come back. He's just cramping up. But you were just showing me like, yeah, I'm already cramping 18 miles in. I still got 22 more to go, and you finished it.
Yeah. And I took a video that day too. I don't know if I mean, I could post it. I don't know if it makes sense to post it to the YouTube, but I took a video on that run, like literally talking to the camera, being like, this fucking sucks. Like, I hate this. Like, I don't hate like running, like not like I don't want to do the 100-mile race, but like I hate this feeling. Like my legs were like throbbing, and because I was cramping up and like I was behind on electrolytes, like it literally felt like my legs were going to cramp up like every step I took.
Which kind of goes into the fueling side of it too, which we'll make a whole nother podcast on that, on
another thing,
how to fuel.
Yeah. I think that run was huge for fueling for the 100-mile race, and I think that's another reason why he did that run.
So what you ended up getting out of the 40-mile training run, if you want to sum it up, you essentially then knew what, I don't want to say what it was going to be like, but you had an idea of what it feels like.
Yeah.
And then number two, you know exactly how the fueling should look, because that did, I would say that drastically changed our fueling
How
plan.
I fueled. It did.
Especially for me, whenever I was at the aid stations and had your stuff ready, because had it been me before, I would have just done 1,000 milligrams of sodium.
And that's what I did.
Every hour I saw you, but we realized, because it was in the dead middle of the summer, obviously temperature is going to affect your fueling strategy. So then we went to 1,500 milligrams of sodium per hour, which sounds insane, but actually worked out really well.
Great. Yeah, I felt great during the 100-mile race in terms of like how I fueled.
So that's what you got out of the 40-mile training run. We kind of summed up what it was like training during. So now do you want to go into kind of like the week leading up and then the race itself?
Yeah, I was going to talk about like 2 to 4 weeks out. So I had ran that 40-mile training run 5 weeks out. And then kind of like how I talked about, I don't know if it helped me or affected me, but I didn't have a doubt that I wouldn't finish the 100-mile race. But it was really hard to comprehend like how I was going to get through the 100 miles. Like if I was going to have to crawl at some point, you know what I'm saying? Like how miserable was I going to be in the 100-mile race? And it kind of scared me like 4 weeks out, and it got worse as it got closer. Like I guess self-doubt in that way, but like I said, like I knew I could finish the 100-mile race. I never had any doubts about that. But 2 weeks out was pretty scary. The week leading up, I didn't really think much of it until the day before, and the day before it really hit. The day before, because I'll talk about that, because 2 to 4 weeks out, like
You're just training.
Yeah, that's just how I felt. The day before the race was definitely the scariest day in terms of like my nerves and everything like that.
Yeah, where were you at?
I was at home, I think, before I went to your apartment.
This is hometown.
Yeah, Murfreesboro. And I got all my gear ready, and I went to your apartment. I ate, and then we got the final things together. We wrote down like what our plans were for the aid stations, everything like that. We got everything in the car, and
which I would say for our first go around, planning that out, we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Because we had everything planned for. We went through essentially each aid station and knew how far it was from station to station, mileage wise, and then we could kind of estimate how long it was going to take you to get from station to station. And then given the temperature, what type of fuel would you need?
How many milligrams of sodium? How many grams of carbs?
Which we had dialed.
Yeah.
But the race, I would say going into the next one, we now know what changes quite a bit is cravings. And I don't think that there's a point, at least for you, it may be different for other ultra runners, but I know for you, there was a point whenever you were pretty much just give me watermelon.
Yeah.
Give me watermelon, and I want a bomb energy drink and ibuprofen, and I'm chilling. Like no more LMNT packets, no more gels. So
we got to talk about that part too. But
yeah, we'll get in.
Yeah, training or like listing out like what we're gonna do the next day. That's what we did, and then it was time to go to sleep. And I laid down, and I think at this point I had 6 or 7 hours until I had to wake up, which I knew I wasn't going to get like a crazy amount of sleep because I wanted to get everything perfect before I went to bed and woke up and it was time. But I laid down, and I remember thinking like in that moment, like it was bigger than running 100 miles at that point. That's when it really hits you. And I started thinking about like everything that could go wrong, just in terms of like you're out in the middle of nowhere, like didn't know this at that point, but like no connection. What if something happened to me? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if I died? Like, that's kind of the thoughts that like ran through my head. Like while I was laying in bed was like, what if I hate snakes. What if I got bitten by a snake, like a venomous snake, and like I'm 5 miles away from an aid station and like I die. Like, what if I fall, I hit my head? Like, those are the type of thoughts that are going through my brain. Like, it's more than just running 100 miles at this point. Like, what if I die? Like, it's 100 miles. It's crazy. But that ate me up for a while and ended up falling asleep with 3 hours left until I had to wake up. So I got 3 hours of sleep before the day of the race and woke up. Nerves were high. I remember just looking at you like, it's the day.
It's the day.
Yeah. Gonna go run 100 miles. And
I think something has to be said for that type of day. I've felt it, and this isn't even my own event. This is just being part of other people's insane feats, whether it's an Ironman, 100-mile race, whatever it may be. But just even being a spectator or someone that's helping support someone do an event like that, when you wake up on that day and it's pitch black, it's dead silent. Most of those days you wake up at 2, 3 a.m. Very uncommon time to wake up. I mean,
start time was 5 a.m. So
you're waking up insanely early. You essentially didn't sleep. No one's really talking, but everyone knows what's about to happen. It's one of the most eerie, I would say eerie. I'm just going to leave it there. It's one of the most eerie feelings.
It is.
in the world. And I wasn't even running the race.
Yeah. And the car ride there was that feeling exactly. We didn't really talk much. We kind of just turned up the music, and it also hit in that point too, like, damn, I'm running 100 miles today. But we got there, same feeling. It's pitch black outside. Like, everyone's at their cars. No one's talking about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just getting your gear ready, and you know that you're about to go, like, walk up to the start line, and it's about to be time.
And it's so funny. I think this goes with like athletics or any sort of fitness endeavor, how everyone gets ready for the races differently. We were more dead silent, kind of, I don't want to say focused, but definitely more just thinking about what was about to happen ahead. And then you have people who have done, let's say, 10 plus of these, and they're always just laughing,
like
making jokes,
which
giving
is
everyone shit.
how I feel like I'm going to be at my next one. But
yeah, just because I don't know if it's because the nerves aren't there, but they've just, dude, the mindset of some of these people that run these races, I don't want to say for a living, but do it frequently, and they've done it for a long time, they are just wired differently.
Yeah.
Pain and struggle is not, I don't want to say not a thing to them, but they have a way of dealing with it. I would almost say with humor and sarcasm, and it's really funny, but also inspiring to be around at the same time.
Exactly. And to bring up too, I forgot to put this in there, but then the day before, whenever we went to signups, what was his name? I'll remember it. But anyway, he was in front of me at the sign up line, and he had heard, because I was talking to the people that were registering me, and he overheard me say that it was my first 100-mile race, and that I had only ran a half marathon, like race wise, before running 100 miles. And he texted me after the race, like saying, like, dude, like, I thought there was no way that you were finishing that 100 miles, like, especially Shawnee. Like, you signed up for this race for your first 100-mile race, like, let alone you've only ran a half marathon race. Like, what are you doing? Like, that type of thing. But that's besides the point. We came up to the start line, and like the family was there. Everybody was there. Like, that's when everybody started cheering, and like,
that's one of the cooler experiences. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I would never run 100 miles in my entire life, you should at least see one or see people start it or finish it at some point in your life. It's a super cool experience. You're just looking at all these humans that are about to run 100 miles smiling, and you just, the thought in your brain is like, yeah, God, there's like something sickening about these people, but they're also all great humans all in one spot. It's just powerful, dude. You put that powerful of brains all in one spot. It's really, really, really cool to be a part of. And then you kind of get the bug. And when people say the bug, it's just, it's not that you become addicted to that specifically, but you become more addicted to being around people and environments like that. Yeah.
And there's a whole community in the ultra space.
Yeah.
But they counted us down, and we took off.
What's going through your head when that, when like
a lot of anxiety,
like, actually?
Yeah. Like, the thought that I'm going to be out there 24 plus hours, like, my heart rate, I remember looking down at my watch and my heart rate, just like, let alone like just starting out, I'm like a 10:30, 11 minute pace, and my heart rate's at like 160, like, cause I'm just kind of freaking out.
Yeah.
But we got like 1 to 2 miles into the trail, and I started to calm down. Like, I'm going to be out here all day. Like, what's the point of like worrying about anything? I'm just going to take it one step at a time. So I calmed down like 1 to 2 miles into it. And at that point in the race, like, whenever you start out, like, you do have everyone right there. So like, everyone just started the race. So I was talking to a lot of people that like had ran 100-mile races before, had ran this race before. I remember getting caught up with like a lady, and I ran with her for quite a while at the start before I came to the first aid station. And me and her talked about everything. Like, she gave me like really good advice for the 100-mile race, and I was asking her about snakes and like what to do about like snakes. And she gave me good advice about that too. She was like, you'll smell this snake, like it smells like cucumbers. She was like, you'll hear a rattlesnake before you see it. So like, just like kind of watch your step and like just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, but like, you won't have any issues. She was like, no one's really ever gotten bitten by a snake out here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're more scared of you. You know what I'm saying? But to think that like that was like one of my bigger fears, like in the 100-mile race, is funny too.
Mm-hmm.
But and then I hung with her until we got to the first aid station, which was 8 miles from the start. It was a little bit longer on the start because we did a 2-mile loop and then we went out into the woods or the Shawnee National Forest. But 8 miles, came up to the first aid station. Obviously, I was happy. I was smiling the whole time. But saw you in that one we took pretty quick. Like, you just refilled my electrolytes and I went back out. And that second one to the next aid station was the longest one in between me seeing you from the first one to the next one, because I had an aid station in the middle, but it wasn't like the crew wasn't allowed.
Was this into the teens miles?
Yeah, it was 12 or 13 miles.
I would say this is the first time. I don't want to say you started to notice people like changing a little bit, but from a spectator's point of view, this is when you started to notice who was in it for the long haul, and you could kind of start sensing out.
I remember you saying that.
Who was gonna start to die off as a spectator, because you'd see people come in and
this was at you're talking about these people whenever they got to mile 20, because that was mile 20 whenever I saw you the next time after the first aid station.
That's what I'm
So you're talking about these people at 20 miles in.
Yeah, and this is nothing to say. Like, they're all great people, and it was a bunch of great athletes all together in one spot. Vibes were high, but I think that people have different coping mechanisms, and not even I know, but watching people come into the aid station, being a spectator at this point was cool for me, because you could see it not only on people's faces, but how they interacted with the people at their aid station. So if they came up to their family or friends, whatever it may be, and the first comment was something negative, let's say the hills just fucked me up, my foot this, my elbow this, I'm telling you, and I'm not saying you can't say things like that, but the majority of the time, those people, they fell off super quick. But it was always the people that either one dealt with it with humor. They would come in and kind of laugh and scream and just kind of joke around with their people. Yeah, those people were killers. Those people, I would say you could tell were born leaders in a way, because their family seemed to be more worried about them than they were worried about them. But to kind of mitigate all that, they just made people laugh and made jokes about things sucking rather than saying they sucked. Or the conversations would be about something completely irrelevant. Yeah, it had nothing to do with the race itself. It was just, you're just talking like, yo, what's up? Good to see you again. That type of thing. So I think for me, what I learned very quickly was if I wanted to help you in any way complete the race, it became obvious to me, oh, okay, my job is to make this seem as normal as possible. Like,
you did.
Like, every time you come in, it was more just, how can I just talk to Drew like he's doing great, without being cheesy about it too? Because I think there's a side of it where it's, you come in and you look bad, and as a spectator, you're like, man, you look great, dude, killing it. You're like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
like,
you're like, yeah,
dude, I know I look
you're
like
being
shit.
fake right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's more just, I know you're being fake right now. You're two-faced, fucking. But it's more of just making conversation normal, and not, I would say it got to the point where it wasn't, what do you need? It was more just here, and let's just talk about something random. But mile 20, it's crazy that early on, but you really do start to notice.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep in mind, like, that 40-mile training run, 18 miles in, like, I felt
That's
it.
how you felt, yeah.
Yeah, and it's similar to how I felt, too, in the 100-mile race. Like, I got the same feeling around mile 18 to 20. But that's when I said after the race that everything's all perspective. Yeah. Because whenever I felt that feeling at mile 18 and 20, I knew that I had much longer to go. So, like, my body could still carry me a lot further. Yeah. So, like, the feeling was there, but, like, it didn't affect me as much mentally. Yeah. And, I remember leaving the second aid station, and that's also the point, too, because to the first aid station, I talked to the girl most of the time, so like I didn't need like my headphones or music.
Mm-hmm.
But that second aid station, I think, is whenever I told you like, yo, my headphones don't even work.
Yeah. And for me at this point, I'm like, okay, I have to get Drew headphones, and also there's no Wi-Fi connection. For some reason, Drew's delinquent and didn't download any of his music, podcast, anything to his phone. We're out in the middle of nowhere, so I can't really get music on it. So I'm starting to think, man, maybe I'll have to give Drew my phone.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue there was I had the maps downloaded on my phone,
Yeah.
so I could get around from aid station to aid station and know where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
So then that really wasn't an option at that point. I think I ended up driving out. I knew at one point I had an hour till you were at the next aid station. So like I flew into town,
Mm-hmm.
got your phone out, had like 1 bar of service, and downloaded a David Goggins and
I'm going to talk about that too.
And I think it was an Ed Milet podcast.
It was.
Because I had listened to that one, and I told you that may have been one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to.
Yeah, I'll talk about that
and then
podcast too.
let that one bless your ears.
Yeah,
But
that was at mile 40 whenever I got that podcast too.
so you got headphones at mile 40.
Yeah, I
It was
had
just silence
I
for
had
the first,
nothing for the first 40 miles.
which is however many hours.
I think it took me a little bit longer than the first 40 miles had taken me in the training run. I think it was around 10 hours.
Yeah.
But I left that second aid station. I don't remember much from the race from mile 20 to 40 until I got that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But at mile 40, whenever you gave me that podcast and I actually got to listen to something, I remember listening, and I remember this story very well because it hit really hard whenever I was out on the trail.
Mm-hmm.
I remember David Goggins talking about his first 100-mile race that he had ever done, and he didn't even train for it. He did zone 2 training on the treadmill on an incline. So he treadmill incline walked,
Mm-hmm.
and he ended up doing his first 100-mile race. The only reason he did this 100-mile race was because he wanted to do Badwater. It was Badwater 135, and the director told him that he had to have like a 100-miler under his belt, but he also had to do it in a certain amount of time too.
Mm-hmm.
So he signed up for this 100-mile race that was around a track,
Mm-hmm.
and never ran 100 miles before, never really ran before.
I remember listening to this now.
And I remember how hard this hit whenever I was out there running on the trails at mile 40. And I remember him saying how he wasn't going to make the time. He got to 60 or 70 miles in, which is already crazy enough for not running.
Mm-hmm.
He got to 60 or 70 miles in, and he had to sit down. And he was so messed up at that point, like physically and like, I don't know about mentally. I don't know what he said about that, but he was so messed up physically that he didn't know if he was gonna be able to finish it, especially in like the amount of time that he had. And he knew that like if he wanted to finish it, like he had to finish it really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And he did the last 30 or 40 miles at an 8:30 pace. And that blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I heard that out on the trails. I was like, okay, so this guy had never ran before. He ran a 100-mile race. And then the last 30 or 40 miles, he ran at 8:30 pace. Like
the human brain is capable
of anything. Yeah. And that's when it really like put everything in perspective, because I had, I guess one thing I do remember for mile 20 to 40 was probably my first low point in the race, because it had really hit me at that point that I had like 60 to 70 miles to go. And the way my body had felt was pretty wild at that point already, that I was like, this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a completely different race than I had even expected before, like, I got out here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never doubted myself, not even in the whole 100 miles. Like, there was not one point I knew that I was not going to finish the race, which is a pretty cool feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the first low point, and I got the David Goggins podcast from like mile 40 to 50. And that picked me up a little bit, and then got to mile 50, and that's whenever it had hit nighttime, and Matt and Melissa were there, Carlos was there, and this is whenever I hit the aid station again, that is the 12 to 13 miles in between.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I hit the 50-mile point, that's whenever I got the bum and I got the medicine, which made me feel amazing.
The bum sounds crazy for people who don't. The bum sounds like you sniffed cocaine.
That's my bad. No, it's an energy drink. It was only 100 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah.
Which next time I'm gonna do a lot more caffeine.
You think?
Yeah. I've watched a few different people that do like quite a bit of caffeine throughout their 100-mile race.
We just didn't know, and I think at the time we were more worried that
I was gonna like cramp
mess with your heart.
Get way too much caffeine in, but and not like a ton, but definitely more because I only did one bum.
Yeah.
In that race. But I drank a bum and I took some ibuprofen at mile 50, and that's when Carlos picked me up for my first pacer at nighttime. Mm-hmm. And that was the highest point of my race. I felt amazing. Dude, the ibuprofen, like my legs felt fresh.
You probably had good conversation with Carlos then.
Yeah, I did too, because like I was so bored for the first 40 miles. But we were talking, my legs felt perfectly fine. And funny part about running with Carlos, which looking back now too is kind of stupid. We heard a coyote, and obviously like whenever we came to the aid station, they were like, yo, they're harmless. Like they're not going to touch you. But we had heard a coyote like 3 miles out from the aid station.
Boys came sprinting in.
Dude, and it was uphill. We sprinted straight uphill for like a mile and a half. And I was like 50-something miles in, like 57 miles in or something like that.
Yeah.
Sprinted up a hill. My heart was like 180 like the whole time that we ran. But good times. And then after that point, I picked up Melissa at mile 58. And that's when the tiredness started to hit. So I started to get drowsy.
She'd probably agree.
She would agree because I did not talk to her the whole time.
Yeah, she knew you were messed up at that point.
Me and Melissa walked, I think, almost the whole time because that was pretty deep into the night. I'm pretty sure it was around 2 a.m.
For people, whenever you're a pacer in this race too, you realize how messed up the trail was. And for anyone that's done Shawnee, absolute respect to you because it's not just a flat trail. There are so many hills with rocks, and it is majority hiking.
The terrain is very, very technical on Shawnee. Yeah. Like there were parts, which I'm glad you brought that up. There were parts of the trail that were like almost straight up.
Yeah.
And they were like boulder rocks.
We need to I have videos on my phone as well of whenever I paced you for the last 15, but I have videos of what the terrain was like.
Yeah. It's nearly impossible to run on. Like you're gonna roll an ankle, you're gonna trip and like bust your ass on like a bunch of rocks.
We can post those as shorts, and we'll just say terrain for my first 100 mile, and we'll post it as shorts on the YouTube for people so they can
see it,
get an idea. So if they listen to this, they're like, wow, okay, now it's putting it in perspective.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
But the terrain was insane. Actually, one point of the race, and I told Matt about this hill that he was going to pace me on. This was after Melissa, but me and Melissa didn't talk the whole time because I was so tired at that point because it was 2 or 3 in the morning.
What did you feel like at this point? Like truly, like what did your...
The ibuprofen wore off, so my legs were... Oh, and at that point too, after I got done with Carlos, that's when I was chafing really bad. That's whenever we tried to put the squirrel's nut butter on, but at that point, like, which I learned now too, you got to put on the nut butter like way sooner than you think, like before you chafe.
Yeah,
because if you don't catch it before you chafe, like you're just done for.
We should also throw a disclaimer that you were wearing, like, wasn't it just like
regular shorts? They were Gymshark shorts.
I'm saying underwear wise.
The Lululemon.
Oh, you were wearing like briefs, like athletic, but the shorts still,
like bad.
Still did it to you.
This may be too much, but like bright red everywhere. You know what I'm saying?
Everywhere.
And like I thought I was bleeding whenever I like changed.
Thought you might lose get a hole in the sack.
That one, it was burning. Like bad.
You had me worried. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, dude.
No, I mean, I'm not that I'm like super concerned about your sack.
Yeah.
But I mean, just hearing it was like, wow. I hope that. I mean, he has 50 more miles on his balls. I hope that they're okay.
Dude, it was so bad. That's why, and I was so tired at that point too, that we walked the whole segment with Melissa, which I think was like 7 miles.
Mm-hmm.
I think Matt had 10 with me.
I thought it was more than that, but
12,
yeah,
something like that. 7 or 8 miles with Melissa, and we walked the whole time. Didn't talk much. And then I picked up Matt, but I told Matt about this before. This part of the course that literally, no joke, you had to climb.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it wasn't like that scary, like you like rock climbing, like straight up, but like you had to like put your hands on the rocks to like pull yourself.
Matt had the worst terrain as a pacer, and Matt had just came off his event as well.
Yeah, the week before he did a half Iron. Wait, half Ironman.
He did a half Ironman the week before. He was broken.
Yeah,
and went out there to pace you.
Shout out Matt. That's crazy.
What a guy.
Yeah. But I told him about this hill, and like whenever we went up it was like, dude, like this is like, how is this in a 100-mile race? Like you're like, I don't know. But after you get up that part, it is pretty cool though, because you do run like right alongside of like a 50, 100-foot drop. So like you get to see like
everything,
like the Shawnee Hill, like the forest.
Before Matt picked you up though, I do want to, I'm going to try to paint the scene here as someone who's watching it. I think it's easier because your brain was absolutely.
I was toast by that point.
Your brain was gone.
Because that was mile
50 something.
No.
60 something.
Yeah, because I did 15 with you, so it had to been.
Oh yeah, because Carlos did over 10. Dude, this would have been more towards 70. This would have been like 68.
Then I'm tweaking a little bit.
72. Yeah, this would have been actually more like 70 probably.
Yeah. That sounds right.
But waiting on you to come in whenever I was waiting with Matt. So it was me, Matt Force was waiting, and then that was it. Carlos hung out a little bit after his, but we were just waiting on you. This, and not even just from your perspective, from my perspective of the race, was the hardest part of the race of all, because it's 3 a.m. All adrenaline.
Later than that, right?
Maybe.
Because by the end of Matt's part, it was daytime again.
Yeah. But you guys were just straight up walking. So this is where the point of the race started taking forever, and you guys were taking way longer than we thought. And as a spectator, you're just sitting there, and dude, how many people started the race?
27.
So many people had dropped out. Whenever you're at
27 people started the 100-mile race.
Yeah.
We had many more people do the 100K.
But when it's that late at night, and you have some like veterans dropping out, or people that have done them before dropping out, and you've never done one and you're still in it, and it's dead of the night, you can hear every creature in the world. You see eyes. Everyone's silent. People are falling asleep, sitting up. At that point, that's when it's not, I don't want to say, but it's obvious, but that's the point. It's not fun. And you're just sitting there like, wow, I really can't wait not for this to be over, but just to honestly see the sun again. That's just to see life.
Literally.
And get a little bit of hope here. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So me and Matt definitely, I mean, we walked like the whole time. It took forever. And a little bit funnier, of like the funnier side of the story. Towards like daytime, this is after we got up over those rocks and like got on the top where you can see over, like the sun was coming up. So like you could see the sunrise. So it was bright. And this is when Matt was like, yo, you want to start running a little bit? And in the back of my head, like, obviously I didn't want to run, but at this point, dude, I like right after we got up those rocks, for some reason, hit me like a train. I had to like dookie bad, like real bad, because I hadn't shit the whole race. So this was like 70, I guess, like you said, like 70 something miles in.
A lot of calories just
sitting. And I had to dookie. And like I didn't want to run because I felt like dog shit. Like my legs hurt so bad and like my stomach hurt. But whenever he was like, yo, you want to pick it up a little bit? I was like, yeah. Like,
because if I don't, I'm shitting my pants. I'm shitting my pants.
Yeah, so we picked it up.
Yeah.
And we started running. Low key, Matt was kind of taking off.
He was getting it.
Yeah, he was getting it. And like, we made it to the next aid station. You know, I was good. Everything was fine. But that was an experience in itself too. I hope they have bathrooms around at Rocky.
Yeah.
But we got to that aid station, and then I sat down for a little bit. I think that's why it took a little bit longer, because it was daytime at that point, and like I was super hungry, especially after I went to the bathroom. Like I was starving, and Matt was like, "Yo, just sit down here for like 10, 15 minutes and like actually like eat like food."
Yeah.
And they had quesadillas and they had bacon, which sounded really good at that point. So I was
you
like,
just want food.
yeah, I was smacking them. But ate that, and I think we sat there for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we went to the next aid station, which is where I picked you up. But yeah, we went through that and got back, and that's when I picked you up. And at this point in the race, like you're 85 miles in, terrible. I mean, this is when I picked you up was the worst part of the race, 100%. Like the hardest part of the 100 miles, and a lot of people are like, "How? Like you're almost done. What do you mean? Like that's the hardest part of the race?" I was so delusional by that point, like completely drained. I'd gotten 3 hours of sleep the night before.
Yeah.
I'd been up 24 hours. I got back with Matt, and I picked you up at mile 85. Completely like the hardest point of the race. Completely drained, like delusional. I'd gotten 3 hours of sleep the night before, and I was moving on, I think at that point, more than 24 hours running. It was. Yeah. It was like 8 miles or 28 hours running. And like, I just wasn't there at that point. Like I was in a whole nother world, like in my brain. Honestly, probably another reason why I finished the race. 'Cause like, I don't even know if I could comprehend like saying I was done. You know what I'm saying? Like I was just literally just out there just moving.
Yeah.
And you can give probably pretty good input on your part with me, because you were probably a little bit more coherent than I was at that point, which I mean, you had been up for 24 hours at that point too.
Just documenting, just videoing, just anything
which
you needed.
I know you were completely drained too.
Yeah, but nowhere near as you. I think at this point, I'll be honest, as a spectator, it went from being cool to I'm actually kind of nervous. And I'll be real.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, I actually became, and this may be just a big brother type of thing, but I actually became genuinely concerned for your health at this point in time. Your feet were destroyed.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that either. That was
when I took your socks off the first time. I saw your toenail coming off, and you're like, "How does it look?" I'm like, "Great, that's fantastic. Foot looks great."
I was delusional at that point. So, like you were saying earlier, like when people were like, "Yo, you look great," and like you can tell, I couldn't tell.
That was a point in time where I was being fake. Straight up.
Couldn't tell.
Yeah, it looks.
I believed it.
Foot looks good.
Believed it. Honestly, and that was at mile 60 whenever I started feeling the blister on my foot, but I thought my nail had fallen off.
Yeah.
And I thought my nail was just in my sock. I thought like my nail was poking the bottom of my foot. So I was like, I'm just going to keep running like it's good.
Yeah.
Little did I know.
Little did you know.
But yeah, keep going.
But whenever we started, I had talked to Matt a little bit whenever you guys got back, and he kind of like not whispered to me, but just talked to me like he's moving slow. He's walking the majority of the time. And this is when I didn't know what this was. This is a common thing for ultra runners, but this is the first time I looked at you and noticed the blank stare.
Yeah.
Like no one's home type of thing.
No one was home.
And you're just sitting there wondering. This is when the questions like, why the fuck? Like, what is the point? What are we doing? Why is this even? What are we getting out of this? That's when those questions start creeping in your brain. And it's wild because you're 85 miles in, but there are still a few people dropping off at this point, even though it seems that close. This is the point of the race. I would say it seems that close, but it's still pretty, like, it's a good distance.
I still had
over a half marathon to go.
Which, if I was at 26 miles, like I still had 7 hours of running to do. Yeah. Or not running, but moving to do. 7 hours is a long time.
I would say when we first started on the trails for the last 15 miles, that's when it hit me. It was weird. It was like I was entering a video game with you, like a virtual. Obviously, it is reality, but it's almost like a virtual reality thing. And I'm looking at you like, wow, this is what you've been doing the whole time. Because I'm at the aid stations, and it looks fun. The scenery's cool. Trees are all paved out. Road is like all aesthetic, and there's like a fire at everyone, and like people are singing "Kumbaya," having songs and shit.
Yeah.
Great time. And then you actually go out there. And
all alone in the woods.
All alone. And you're supposed to follow these little pink or orange ribbons that show you where the trail goes.
On your right. They're on your right the whole time.
And at this point, I'm sleep deprived too. So you're looking at the trail like, do we turn left? Do we not? I don't even really know.
This was my fault too. He was pacing me, so he was in front of me.
And I know now, but you
know now.
I had just figured you've been out here a lot more than I have. You've done this trail 3 times now. You're sitting there telling me, dude, like we went the wrong way. We went the wrong way. Like we were supposed to turn 10 minutes ago, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm supposed to be the one pacing right now. The guy's already ran 85 miles. No way I can mess this up at the very end because there's a time cutoff at this point.
Which I think we wasted a lot of time just doing that. But where I messed up, I should have just trusted you and like literally just followed you the whole time.
Yeah, but at this point, I looked at my responsibility was there's a time cutoff, and you were getting really close to it, and everyone else had already dropped out at this point, and there were how many people finished?
7.
7 people finished the race, and there was we were 6 or 7. I know
6.
that, and we were the only ones still out on the trail. So everyone's pretty much just like, will this guy be able to make it in the time cutoff? And I'm sitting there thinking, this is a huge part of my job right now is to be the one that hasn't ran 85 miles and know where the fuck I'm going.
Which at that point, everyone before me had. The first place one was 25 hours, and the one before me was 28. So everyone else had already finished in front of me.
Which these are guys who do ultras all the time, so it gives you kind of insight on what the terrain was like. But
yeah, and like there's some ultra races where people are running like 15 hours.
Yeah.
And the first place guy was 25. That kind of puts in perspective like how difficult the course was.
I think we talk about moments a lot that you remember that feel, I don't want to say spiritual, but almost in a way that you'll never forget. It's like there's like moments in time that are just etched into your brain that you won't forget. I would say the one for me was when I started pacing you at this point, and I was trying to be on some motivational shit, probably having like super deep conversations. And I think you were so far past that point that you were just kind of like, if you just didn't talk, that'd be cool too.
No, dude, I don't know if I ever explained this to you. In that moment, I remember the moment exactly because I felt bad after I said it. Like in the moment, I felt bad, but I was way too tired to even like say anything afterwards.
Yeah.
You were talking, and I felt bad because I wasn't responding.
Yeah.
And like I appreciated you talking to me.
Yeah.
And that's whenever I was like, "Yo, dude, like I can't talk."
I
think you took that as like, I don't want to hear anything.
Oh, word.
I don't want to talk.
Yeah.
All I meant was like, yo, I have no words. Like,
I can't respond.
I can't, like, I have no energy at this point. Like, I literally can't say a word. And that's why I was like, I can't talk.
My thing was just, I'm trying to keep your brain active because I felt like,
I liked that.
The more quiet it got, you realize that the trail just starts to look the same. And this is the moment that will forever be etched in my fucking brain.
Mine too.
I look back at you and I realized that you had been crying. And I noticed you said, it feels like it's never going to fucking end.
Yeah, dude, I remember. Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a living hell.
Yeah, it gives me chills thinking about it. But yeah, this was.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. I look back like, all right, brother, what?
Kind of gives me that feeling again. But
it was very eerie. It's morning, it's daylight again. You don't know how many times you've seen the sun come up.
We had like 7 miles left, and at that point, I was behind you, like kicking rocks and like stubbing my toes and like in so much pain at that point. Yeah, you turned around and I was crying, and I was like, this feels like fucking torture. And I said it like that, and it genuinely felt like genuinely, because I was so delusional at that point and like so tired. Like I felt like I was in a bad dream, and like I felt like I was never gonna get out of the woods. Like genuinely never thought I was like going to make it out of the woods. And it was scary. Super scary. But we made it to the last aid station. I think we were like 3 or 4 miles away from finishing. And that's whenever like I kind of like came back and I was like, okay, like we're almost done. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm at that point now. Like that was terrible. Like the last 10 miles that we had was absolutely terrible. It took us like 5 hours to get 8 miles. But like it was finally over with and we were at the last aid station. And I don't know how at this point, but I remember your conversation with the guy at the aid station. Dad was helping me out and I was looking at you and I saw the dude talking to you. He was like, yo, treat this like it's like 6 miles. Like he doesn't have very much time left.
So you did hear him?
I heard him. Yeah. And
I was hoping you didn't at that point in time.
Well, I'm glad I did because we got back out on the trail with like 3 or 4 miles left. And that's when I asked you, and I remember this vividly too. I asked you, I was like, am I going to finish? And good on your part at this point too.
I was honest.
You told me, you were like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You straight up, you were like, I don't know. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know?
Yeah. Can you imagine that? Going through all of that just at the very end to be like, yeah, DNF.
That might have been the scariest feeling.
That may have been worse than just dropping out at like mile 40.
Yeah.
Oh, it is worse.
Yeah. And I remember that feeling like heavy as well. Because whenever you said that, I was like, well, what are we doing? And you were like, can we run? And I was like, we can sprint. Like, I didn't say that, but like, that's what I'm thinking in my head. Like, whatever we got to do to finish this race. And we took off. We started running.
Yeah.
And we ran. I think we ran the last 3 miles.
We ran, walked. And you didn't know the course at all at this point. You thought you did. Yeah. But we kept thinking we were like at the end. And you were like, oh, no, it's the next one. Oh,
that kept me getting through it, too, because I thought I was almost done. But, yeah, we were running like majority of that last like aid station to finish. And I remember like actually getting out of the woods at that point. Like whenever we hit the road and just looking at you and just fucking smiling like, dude, we fucking did it. And it's the coolest feeling in the world too. Cause like you come out on this road that's right beside like a big pond and there's a bridge, like a
very scenic.
And we get out on this road that's beside the pond and there's like a drone up in the air and like it all just feels like so like
there's a drone in the air. Yeah. Mickey and her husband were there taking pictures and it was like as we go across the bridge, because you cross the bridge to get to the other side. It's really cool how that course is set up because when the loop ends, you go across the bridge to get to the other side, and then you pretty much just walk up a hill and you're there.
Yeah, it's one of those bridges too that kind of like bow.
Like yeah, I feel like you could literally just fall all the way through it.
It's cool though. I like it. It is cool. But like just seeing like the drone and like walking like down the bridge, like and they're at the very end of the bridge just taking pictures. You're like, dude, we fucking did it. And
yeah, and then
dude, like the feeling you get from that is insane.
I remember that when we got across the bridge, walking up the hill, that was the moment that it hit for me. And I looked at you and I was like, holy fuck, dude, you just ran 100 miles. Oh my God. And then all the people that had been there at random times throughout supported, helped grab anything, just like good friends in the process overall. Everyone was there at the end.
Yeah. And I also have the video too, which I think we could post as a short. You could see it like in my eyes and like, whenever I crossed the finish line, like the deep breath I took was like the feeling of like I went like that and I was like, and like I was just like smiling like, dude, it's like, it's over with. You know what I'm saying?
And a part here to talk about, everyone said they expected us to, I think, be super emotional at this point.
I didn't even cry at that point.
Yeah, I don't even think, and obviously it's different for you. You did the race, but I don't know. I think any emotion I had felt had been in the last like 7 miles. And once it was done, it was more just like, thank fucking goodness. Dude.
Yeah, dude.
That was it, really.
Yeah. Well, I'm done. And that's kind of how it was. I had like a sigh of relief. But, and yeah, I had felt emotion from like the whole 32 and a half hours. But they had already cleaned up like the finish point. All that kind of stuff because they didn't know if I was going to finish or not because the cutoff was 33 hours and I finished in 32 and a half. But And then like kind of like after the race, because like guess we kind of covered everything. I knew that we're not going to cover all the details because there's so much that happened in the 32 hours, but that's like the rough overview. Afterwards, I sat down on the rocks that were there, and we took pictures. And after that, like I think at that point, like your body and your mind like know that you're done. So like there's no more like
adrenaline, nothing.
Like telling it to like keep going. And at that point, like whenever I stood back up, like I felt like I couldn't walk. So like y'all had like kind of carried me to the car.
You actually feel it all.
Yeah, and like set me in the back of the car, and I laid down, and I remember Mom saying that she was terrified on the way home because apparently I was laying in the back and I was like shaking. Yeah. But like I was asleep, and I was shaking in the back of the car. I'm sure that's just like my body being like, yo, like what just happened?
Well, yeah. We didn't sign up for this.
No. But hour drive home, and Dad let me sleep in the back of the car for like an hour after that. So I was in the back of the car for like 2 hours. But whenever he came and opened the door, like, and it was time for me to get out of the car, at this point, I'm done with 100 miles. It's been 32 hours, and I've just sat still for 2 hours.
Yeah, which you hadn't done yet.
I couldn't, like, literally, I was laying in the car. I couldn't bend my legs. So, like, I was, like, laying there, like, stiff. And like, I couldn't move anything. So he had to, like, pull me out of the car and like carry me to the couch inside. And he laid me down on the couch, and they like gave me like blankets or whatever. And I didn't shower that night because I couldn't move. So I slept there on the couch.
I didn't know that. That's nasty.
What are you going to do? You know what I'm saying?
I say next time we don't do that.
Well, of course. But I couldn't do anything about it, dude. I was messed up.
Yeah.
I slept on the couch that night and woke up. Next day, honestly, wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, I was very, very sore, but I could have hobbled around if I wanted to.
It was just
my blister. Yeah. And the day afterwards, you know how moms are. She looked at my foot and she was like, yo, this is terrible. Like, this looks insane. It was filled with pus. Yeah. It had like, I had red lines going like up, like into my, like middle of my toes. And she sent it to one of her friends, and they were like, that's staph. Yeah. Like, you need to take him to the doctor. So we went to the doctor, and I did have staph because I also had dots on my leg, like red dots on my leg. I thought it was poison ivy. And apparently it was just staph. So we caught that soon, which was good because staph is deadly. Yeah. And if next time we need to look out for that if I get any blisters, because if I were to do a race of my own and I would have went home, there's no way I would have went to the doctor for that. Yeah. Which would have been bad. But mom being mom, clutch.
Yeah, I think lesson learned next time. If you're thinking about doing an ultra, lots of socks. Yeah. I'm saying 3 to 4 to maybe 5 pairs of shoes. Yeah. And what do you clean your feet off with in between?
There's this powder that I'm gonna order online, but you're supposed to keep your feet dry. Yeah. Because your feet, when you're on them that long, especially for 100 miles, they swell really, really bad. And my feet were super swollen, and they were also really wet because I was sweating. So I'm guessing what happened was it was swollen. So like the bottom of my feet were like rubbing.
And you think, like, listening to that, you'd think, oh, obviously that would happen. But, dude, there's so many different things you're trying to account for in a race like that. Yeah. Now you know.
And we did. Like, I did change my socks 3 times, and I changed my shoes 3 times. But lesson learned, I need to take more care of my feet. Yeah. But, yeah, I got staph. They took care of it, and I got prescribed, like, medicine and stuff. And I got to go back to Bowling Green at the end of the week and come back to the store. But it took me probably 2 weeks to fully recover, like in terms of like the blister on the bottom of my foot. My HRV and like everything else didn't really recover for like a month afterwards, which is pretty wild to think about because I tried to start running again like 2.5 weeks after. And my zone 2 was like 2 minutes slower than it had been.
Would you say that's a goal of yours this time is like post race to be able to get back into
quicker?
Yeah.
100%.
And I guess we shouldn't say that, though, because I don't want you to be disappointed if you're not, because every race will be
I won't
different.
be. But yeah,
I think
that's a good goal.
You fuel correctly, you take care of yourself correctly during it. There's going to be things that are out of your control. There always is. But I think ideally that's the goal.
Yeah. And one other like topic I wanted to bounce off of outside of this race, or on recovering too, a month to 2 months after my race, I lost 4 toenails. I'll throw that in there too, but that's besides the point too. I still don't have toenails. A big topic that I wanted to talk about in races like that, especially, ultra running, is like the people that you have, and a big lesson, which we talked about lessons learned in 2024. This is one of them. A big lesson I learned from that is like the people you have around you. And I didn't realize signing up for this race, like that not only was I signing myself up, I was signing up the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt bad at points like for that,
Mm-hmm.
because I just signed up like not really like caring or understanding. But after the race, you realize like I signed up for this 100-mile race, and all the people that were there, like, they were up for just as long as I was. They bounced around from 8th station to 8th station. They helped me with everything I needed.
Yeah.
Like, there's zero chance I would have done that without you. Like, you mainly. You were there for the whole time. Everyone else, like, came and went, which, like, I'm not taking that away from them either. They, like, fucking amazing. I love, like, every single one of those people that went.
Yeah.
But, like, you cannot do those races without those type of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that I was signing everyone else up around me whenever I signed up for that race. So I think like the people you have around you is very, very huge. And I'm super appreciative for you and for Briley and everybody else that went out to that race and helped me.
Yeah.
And that's why I called you before I signed up for Rocky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's so much translation from doing events like that. Dude, if you're listening to this and you've ever thought about signing up for a 5K, a half marathon, a small triathlon, an Ironman, anything, I'm telling you, there are so many parallels during the event that translate into real life, and during training training. I sound like a broken record because I say it all the time, but I'm telling you, if you're interested and you're into training, I'm telling you, take the chance and do it. Sign up. And don't look back, because when you do, you have to prioritize everything in your life, because training requires so much out of you. You have to make sure you're showing up in every other aspect. Things aren't on easy mode anymore. You know what I mean? When you sign up for any race, you have to make sure you're still showing up for work. You're still showing up in your relationship as a son, dad, father, brother, coworker, whatever it may be, because you have to get very intentional with your life.
Yeah.
And I saw it completely change you, truthfully. Like, it completely changed you. I would say you're extremely confident in who you are now as well. Obviously, we're all always ironing things out, and none of us have ever arrived. Yeah. We'll never arrive, and that's the point of it. But you do learn what you're capable of, and you start to trust yourself on a different level.
And at that point, it's more than just running a 100-mile race. It's about, like, the process and how it correlates with, like, your life and what you're prioritizing.
Yeah.
But it translates over into everything else. Like, you can pick up, like, so many tiny things go wrong in a 100-mile race, just like life. It really puts in perspective, like, what's hard and what's not hard, especially when you get done with that type of race. Like, looking at situations differently, thinking like, dude, I did this. Like, this is nothing.
Yeah.
Like, this is nothing anymore. And I think another thing too, like, I did have a big confidence boost, and like I'm back to where I was at that point after the race, like now. But therefore, like, I'd say a month afterwards to probably like a month or 2 months ago. So it was like a month or 2 month period where like you get done with like that big of a race.
Yeah.
Where you almost like you peak in confidence. And then you bottom out in confidence.
Yeah. And
then you kind of like level yourself back out.
Yeah.
Because you've done like that big of a feat, and like, then it's like, now what? You know what I mean? Like, what can top that and like that feeling that you had. But I think that's a different topic for like a different podcast and things like that on like doing big things like that.
I don't even think so. I think it comes down to leveling yourself out no matter what happens. I think if things feel bad, you have to always remind yourself that it's not as bad as it probably could be. I think if things feel really good, you have to level yourself out and remind yourself that to put it in layman's terms, you're still not shit. You still have so far to go. But there's not a moment that you shouldn't be proud of what you did or the process that you went through. That's a different thing. You should be proud of that because you're proving things to yourself over time, and that's where self-confidence is built. But
I think it relates back to just running a 100-mile race. Like, you hit very, very low points, and you just have to know that, like, even in that low point, that at some point during the race, you're going to have another high, and, like, it's going to come back. Like, you just have to tough it out.
Relate that directly with life. I think also because a lot of what you see, I don't want to say what you see in the world going on in the world right now, but truly, dude, I think a lot of people are going through some tough things. So I do think it relates directly with life, and that's why I urge people to sign up for things so often, because the difference is you choose to put yourself in that situation, whereas life puts you in situations that you don't choose to be in. That's a different feeling of hard. And I think that whenever you choose to put yourself in a situation like that, with whatever event it may be, you teach your brain how to deal with the pain.
Yeah. And if you were to take anything from this podcast, like listening to this podcast, kind of like what you're saying, like if you want to sign up for something, sign up for it. Another thing on that too, like you don't have to have a plan for like what you're going to do after you sign up. Like, I swear to you, like if you know you want to run something, and it doesn't have to be 100-mile race, because that's not like whatever. It could be a 5K, it could be a mile race, it could be not even running, like it could be something. Like if you had something in mind to do, like literally, I promise you, just sign up like without a plan and then figure it out.
Ignorance is bliss.
100%. I didn't have a plan before I signed up for my 100-mile race.
Yeah.
I didn't know how I was going to train. I didn't know how to fuel at that point for 100-mile races. I didn't know what equipment I needed. I didn't know if I was going to have a coach. I didn't know how to train. I didn't know how many miles a week I needed to do. I signed up for the race. I dropped the money, and then I figured it out.
I think that's with anything, brother.
Yeah. 100%.
Like if you don't even like endurance, I think it's with anything.
Yeah.
And I'm a culprit of this, but I think that we help each other, and that you just have to commit to it. When you commit, you figure the rest out. It's people love to, I think people, and I'm people, I used to do shit like this. You're like, oh, I'm a perfectionist. I got to figure out exactly how this is going to work, and then I'm all in, right?
Yeah.
No, it's commit, and then you figure it out. It's the same thing with starting the podcast. It's like, yeah, you need this equipment, this, and this. You know, there's a million ways to skin a cat, as people would say, and it's the same thing with everything else. You just have to commit, and you figure out the small details as you go, and that's the beauty in it. It's just constant improvement, dude.
Yeah. I think that's a powerful message. Man. Literally. Like,
I will say, because we're kind of getting toward the end here, Rocky Raccoon is when? When's the date?
Oh, yeah, we can talk about just what's coming up. So Rocky Raccoon is February 1st, so it's 3 weeks. I think we said this at the beginning. 3 weeks from yesterday.
And today is?
Today's the 12th.
And people will probably listen on the 12th or 13th when this will go out. So you're about 3 weeks out from Rocky Raccoon, and we'll fly out there. And the plan is this time, I'll help with this, obviously, but you'll have more equipment with you while you do the race. But we'll document the entire thing, and we'll post the entire YouTube video on Drew's channel, or not on Drew's channel, on our channel, on the From the Ground Up podcast on YouTube, so everyone can watch the entire video and kind of see.
It's going to be what I want to share with other people is like the whole experience. Like whenever I'm talking about in this race, like how I felt like the day before. Yeah. Like I want people to like feel that with me. You know what I'm saying? So in this video, I'm probably going to film the day before. Everything that goes on, I'm probably going to take it with me to like the sign up, or not the sign ups, like the registration and like the packet pickups. I'm I'll probably talk about how I feel like the night before. I want like real, like raw, like in the moment, like emotion.
Yeah,
And
we're
then-
not great editors, so we'll just put all the clips together. To be honest with you,
Yeah, but I mean, it'll still be a cool video.
for sure.
Morning of, like, I want people to see and like feel the energy of
Mhm.
like that environment, like almost like they're there with me.
We'll try to bring it as much as possible.
Yeah. But like feeling like the morning of with it being quiet, which this is a much bigger race.
Mhm.
Like, there
Yeah.
was 64 pages.
Of just people competing.
Yeah, and that's 10 people per page. So
Yeah.
that's
Huge.
probably close to
Which I'm kind of
I mean,
excited
640
about.
obviously, but
I'm excited about as one of the people in like the pit or whatever you call that.
Yeah.
Just because I'm gonna have a lot more people to talk to.
oh yeah.
Last
a
time I
ton.
had like 5 to 10,
Yeah.
and hey, I was boys with all of them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
These
Like,
8 stations are loaded at this one.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, like morning of, it'll probably be a lot more live. Like
Mhm.
people will probably have a lot more energy.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to finish this race, so I'll probably going to have a lot of good energy in the morning.
course.
And then you'll be able to see the start. I'm going to take my phone out with me. I don't know if I'm going to get a GoPro or just use my phone yet, but you'll get to see like on the trails, like how I'm feeling on the trails at different like points. And
Mhm.
then he's going to video at 8 stations.
Yep.
So you can see at each 8 station, like how I'm feeling. And
Yeah.
we'll go mile by mile until you pace me.
Yep.
Y'all even get to see like nighttime, like how we feel at nighttime.
Yeah.
You'll get to see me be delusional, maybe a little bit emotional. Who knows?
I would say that's the goal with all of this.
Yeah.
For the next few years, we're just document all of it. We want to create a community where people, younger people, feel empowered to do things that are outside of their comfort zone, whether that is in business, whether you own one or not, whether you're helping grow one, or whether you just want to get into endurance, like we did in this past year. We want to create a community for people to go along with that ride. And while motivation doesn't carry you through to the very end of it, you can at least feel like you're a part of it, and maybe that'll help give you your start, and give you people to reach out to and people to relate with along the way. So,
Yeah. And I also, on that point too, I love talking about fitness and nutrition and anything.
Yeah.
So if anyone ever not needs advice maybe, but just wants someone to talk to about like endurance training or
yeah.
supplementation or nutrition or anything, I'm here to help.
Yep.
I'm here to talk, whatever.
Can reach out on Instagram, probably
Yeah.
the best way to find it. But
Anything.
yeah, from here, guys, we'll keep coming out with weekly episodes. So we'll always record on Sundays. We'll try to get them out Sunday night into Monday morning, somewhere around there. And then we'll always announce whenever we drop the podcast episodes on both of our Instagrams. So we'll get them out on all platforms. We appreciate you guys coming by and listening. And reach out if you all need anything. That's the second episode of the From the Ground Up podcast.
Pod number 2.